The Peruvian government has extended the state of emergency in several regions of the country for another 30 days as social organizations against Dina Boluarte's administration continue protesting. In Turkey and Syria, the death toll climbed to 36,000 1 week after the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that hit the two countries. South Africa declared a state of national disaster after floods caused by recent heavy rains, which have left at least 7 people dead and others missing. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. The Peruvian government has extended the state of emergency in several regions of the country for another 30 days. The announcement coincided with the offer of a special bonus to police officers who repressed demonstrations in the country. As from February 14th, the state of emergency in the country will be extended in several regions such as Lima, Callao, and the southern Apurimac-Cusco-Arequipa road corridor, together with the interoceanic road corridor. The announcement made by the National Police confirms that the force maintains control of the area, together with the armed forces, and will report to the Ministry of the Interior. In this context, the government announced on Monday that members of the Peruvian National Police in Lima and Callao will receive a bonus, equivalent to 4 times their salary for their labor during the past weeks. To date, the repression by these security forces has left at least 48 fatalities in the midst of the nationwide protests demanding the resignation of the President Dina Boluarte. And on Monday, Peru's public prosecutor's office informed that the deaths of 10 demonstrators after the repression of a protest in Ayacucho on December 15th are under investigation. According to local media, the mortal wounds were consistent with those inflicted by Army soldier rifles. In a statement, the public agency indicated that the specialized provincial prosecutor's office has managed to obtain 147 videos of municipalities and homes near the place of the events of December 15th. Local media reports that the forensic ballistic examinations carried out on 9 of the 10 deceased concluded that the entry and exit holes in the bodies are compatible with impacts of 5.56 mm caliber projectiles fired by long-range rifles, like those carried out by the Army soldiers in the day of the events. The second cycle of the peace talks between the government of Colombia and the National Liberation Army started on Monday in Mexico. The talks will address issues such as the bilateral ceasefire and the incorporation of civil society in the construction of total peace. Both sides will also analyze the results of the first report of the Humanitarian Caravan, which will allow for the effective implementation of humanitarian relief for communities affected by the armed conflict. The new formal cycle of negotiations was reactivated only 3 months after Colombia's President Gustavo Petro took office in August, and under his policy of total peace, the delegations held the first round of dialogues between November and December in Caracas. In a statement, Colombia's High Commissioner for Peace thanked the hospitality of Mexico, who serves as guarantor country, together with Venezuela, Chile, Norway, and more recently Brazil. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro presented the health reform bill to the Congress of the Republic on Monday, considered one of the most important ones framed in his policy of total peace. The aim of the bill is to develop primary health care centers throughout the country, both public and private, with extramural teams to provide preventive care. It also proposes the recovery of public management of resources and the regionalization of care, access and coverage of the system throughout the country. On Tuesday, Petro will open the doors of the presidential headquarters for citizens to participate in a health system reform awareness meeting. The government called for a mobilization in front of the Plaza de Armas and Núñez, where from the balcony of the presidential house of Nariño, Petro will share the pillars of the structural reform. We have more stories. The 6th edition of Global Sustainable Technology and Innovation Community Conference began in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Themed for a fair and sustainable future, achieving better technology innovation solutions after the COVID-19 pandemic, this year's conference features 3 days of panel discussions on climate change, biodiversity, widespread environmental pollution, and the rebuilding of a healthy world after the pandemic. This is the first time that the GSTEC conference is held in a South American country. In the United States, a gunman who opened fire at Michigan State University killed 3 people and wounded 5. According to police information, the shooter eventually killed himself after setting off an hours-long manhunt. Campus police also said that the 43-year-old man was not a student or employee and had no affiliation with the university. The shooting began on Monday night at an academic building and later moved to the nearby Student Union, a popular gathering spot for students to eat or study.
We are sad to report that there have been 3 confirmed fatalities. Date is the suspect in this incident was located outside of the MSU campus, and it does appear that that suspect has died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Search and rescue efforts continue in Turkey and Syria after the earthquakes registered in both countries, which have left more than 36,000 dead so far. 4 people were rescued alive on Tuesday in Turkey after 200 hours under the rubble without ingesting food or fluids. These survivors renew the hopes and strength of family members and rescuers at a time when authorities said the total death toll by the end of the rescue works could reach 50,000. In this context, the 2 brothers, aged 17 and 20, found in Kahramanmaraş, together with another aged 18, rescued in Adıyaman, and a 4th survivor in Hatay, have surpassed all expectations. According to the rescue teams, they have some serious injuries, but their conditions is not critical. Meanwhile, the number of casualties in Syria stands at 4,614. In this sense, the local Disaster and Emergency Management Authority announced that so far 31,974 people have died in the country as a result of the earthquakes. It also said that since February the 6th, more than 3,000 aftershocks have been recorded in the region. The institution also stated that search and rescue operations continue under the rubble with approximately 250,000 personnel. Argentina's foreign ministry announced that the country will send humanitarian aid to Syria. The Argentine ambassador to Syria, Sebastián Zavala, confirmed that preparations are underway to carry out the humanitarian mission that will travel to the regions most affected by the earthquake. The operation will be carried out jointly with the Argentine Agency for International Cooperation and Humanitarian Assistance, according to its coordinator, Sabina Frederick. The South American nation has already deployed its humanitarian missions in Turkey. In Syria, the Director General of Civil Aviation informed on Monday that at least 80 planes have arrived in the country with humanitarian aid after the earthquake of February the 6th. A total of 82 planes arrived at 3 Syrian airports. The planes are from various countries, including 6 from Iran, 11 from Iraq, and 3 from Russia. In addition, Saudi Arabia requested permission for its planes carrying humanitarian aid to land in the country. For the time being, an air corridor for Saudi aircraft is being organized. The massive earthquakes struck several provinces in southeastern Turkey and northwestern Syria last Monday. The European Parliament voted on Tuesday to approve a ban on new sales of carbon-emitting petrol and diesel cars by 2035. EU member states have already approved the legislation and will now formally pass it into law despite opposition from conservative members of parliament. Supporters of the bill had argued that it will give European car makers a clear time frame in which to switch production to zero-emission electric vehicles. This, in turn, will support the bloc's ambitious plan to become a climate-neutral economy by 2050 with net-zero greenhouse gas emissions. Russia on Tuesday expressed its repudiation of accusations of an alleged plot to destabilize Moldova. In a statement, the Russian Foreign Ministry pointed out that Moscow does not threaten the security of Moldova in any way and advocates mutual bilateral cooperation. The Kremlin also pointed out that the claims of the Zelensky government are completely groundless and follow the lead of the United States and other Western countries, which aim to steer confrontation between Moldova and Russia. The Russian Foreign Ministry also called on the president of Moldova to show wisdom and not give in to provocations, to concentrate on her work for the interests of her citizens, and to understand the benefits of establishing relations with Russia. The president of China, Xi Jinping, and his Iranian counterpart, Ebrahim Raisi, launched bilateral negotiations in the economic, political, and strategic fields. The Iranian president arrived on Tuesday in China with a specialized delegation for a 3-day visit, seeking to strengthen economic cooperation and to build relations between the two countries. Raisi is scheduled to meet in Beijing with his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, to sign a series of cooperation documents, the government of Tehran said. Iran and China have strong economic ties, especially in energy, transport, agriculture, trade, and investment, and in 2021 they signed a strategic cooperation pact. Currently, both countries face pressure from the Western powers over their positions on the Russian military operation in Ukraine. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. On Tuesday in New Zealand, Cyclone Gabrielle swept away roads, flooded homes and left 225,000 people without power across the country as a national state of emergency was declared. Strong winds and torrential rain lashed the country's populous North Island in what Prime Minister Chris Hipkins called the most significant weather phenomenon New Zealand has seen this century. Local media reported that some people were forced to swim from their homes to safety. An estimated 2,500 people have been forced to flee their homes, but the number is likely to rise. Climate scientist Daithi Stone said Cyclone Gabrielle had been feeding off unusually warm seas, driven by a combination of climate change and La Niña weather patterns.
Cyclone Gabrielle is the most significant weather event New Zealand has seen this century. The severity and the breadth of the damage that we are seeing has not been experienced in a generation. This morning we declared a national emergency for only the third time in our history. We are still building a picture of the effects of the cyclone as it continues to unfold, but what we do know is the impact is significant and it is widespread.
On Tuesday, South Africa declared a state of national disaster after floods caused by recent heavy rains, which have left at least 7 people dead and others missing. Local authorities said that 5 people have died in the KwaZulu-Natal region when their property was flooded. At the same time, they also reported the death of 2 other people in the eastern or north province of Mpumalanga. The presidency declared that the measure is a sustained and coordinated response to the impact of the floods in the various affected regions. Local media also reported that the bad weather is threatening 7 of the country's 9 provinces, mainly on the east coast open to the Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, the South African Meteorological Center forecasts persistent and heavy rains, which could worsen the situation. In 2022, the country suffered the worst floods in its history, which killed more than 400 people. Authorities in the U.S. state of Ohio have issued an evacuation order for residents of the town of East Palestine near the Pennsylvania border after a freight train derailed and caught fire on Friday night. 5 of the 50 or so derailed tank cars were carrying vinyl chloride, a highly toxic and hazardous chemical used mainly in the United States for the manufacture of plastics, such as cable sheeting or packaging materials. In the wake of such an environmental disaster, the authorities decided to release on Monday in a controlled manner the dangerous material in these wagons from a wrecked train that was at risk of exploding and causing greater harm in the surroundings. Meanwhile, in the state of South Carolina and Texas, at least 1 person died after 2 trains derailed. In the state of Texas, 16 rail cars derailed in Montgomery County, while authorities warned about a possible hazardous material emergency. At the same time, in South Carolina, authorities mobilized to attend a similar event in the town of Inouye. The World Governance Summit started on Monday in Dubai, bringing together a high-level delegation to exchange ideas on a wide and urgent range of issues. The meeting will take place from February 13th to 15th and will be chaired by the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The summit will bring together 10,000 international government officials, opinion leaders, global experts, and decision makers. The summit will also host a set of dialogue sessions within 6 main themes, including accelerating development and governance, the future of societies and healthcare, exploring borders, governing economic resilience and connectivity, design and sustainability of global cities, and prioritizing learning and working towards consolidating bilateral agreements and cooperation and exchanging visions on future governments and future policies and strategies. And the World Trade Organization, the WTO, urged to speed up the delivery of aid to countries affected by humanitarian crisis and disaster zones. The call was highlighted at the World Summit of Governments taking place in the United Arab Emirates. According to the organization's CEO, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the agreement signed by governments in 2017 to remove the trade barriers that hinder and achieved a 75% commitment rate. For his part, the managing director of the International Finance Corporation, Makhtar Diop, called on the world leaders and heads of governments to cooperate in making investments to overcome climate problems. He recalled that pandemics, geopolitical crises, and devastating natural disasters have hindered efforts to achieve climate goals. Later this year, the 28th session of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the COP28, will be held in the United Arab Emirates. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.